this idea we can only worship when it's safe. Are we going to be able to stand in the midst of that great cloud of witnesses on the day of judgment? People who went through the horrors and tortures and the heinous ways of putting people to death throughout the Inquisition. People who were fed to the lions in the Colosseum. That whole litany of the Faith Hall of Fame in Hebrews 11. People torn asunder. The prophets, how they were boiled alive and torn asunder by wild beasts. Sawed in half. Are we going to be able to stand, heads held high, in their midst, talking about we shut our churches because it wasn't safe to assemble? You know, I think a lot of people are just trying to squeak by, just trying to punch that ticket for heaven, hoping to do just the minimal to get in. Do you know what? God's spewing the lukewarm out of his mouth right now as we speak. That's what is also going on. Man has his deceiving machinations, but God will use that to purge the tares from out of his midst, from out of the midst of his congregation. The lukewarm are being spewed out, and the righteous are being given the strength to stand. Those that are righteous, clothed in Christ's righteousness, not standing in their own good work.
On March 8, 2020, mere days before a declaration of emergency was issued over fears of a coronavirus pandemic, resulting in a nationwide shutdown of everything outside the global, multinational, corporate sector, United States President Donald J. Trump retweeted a meme originally posted by White House social media director Dan Scavino that featured a picture of the president contentedly playing a violin with the caption, "My next piece is called Nothing Can Stop What's Coming." Above it, the president wrote, "Who knows what this means, but it sounds good to me." The post was ignored by the intelligentsia paradigm right, undoubtedly dismissed as another lovable, humorous foible of their beloved. The educated left went into hysterics, however, guffawing at the president's seeming stupidity, saying things such as, "Someone doesn't know who Nero is." But children, that is your first mistake. Didn't your beloved Lao Tzu tell you that there is no greater danger than to underestimate your opponent? Trump is not unintelligent. He knows exactly what he is doing. Yes, as legend has it, Nero fiddled while Rome burned. But do you know something troubling about this event? Something that is more than mere legend, but attested to and documented fact? Who Nero blamed the false flag, intentional, pre-planned disaster that was the burning of Rome in 64 AD on?
It's a fairy tale where at some point the big bad wolf convinces Little Red Riding Hood and us that happily ever after can be found in his teeth. This is also a story about indoctrination, the slow surrender of individual identity to the crushing embrace of the collective. So why were so many people empowered by it?
Our story concerns abortion and began, strangely enough, in this relatively peaceful suburb of Los Angeles. Malvin Weisberg, a pathologist, owned a large storage container which he kept in his backyard. When he failed to make the final 2 payments, it was repossessed.
We made a decision to repossess it because his check did not clear the bank. And so we sent the truck out to pick up the container.
I rolled out there and took the box up and started pulling it up. And it was so heavy, it's just it broke the winch. And we couldn't get it off the trailer, so we had to leave it on the trailer because it was too heavy.
So I was asked by Nick to have a crew go down and unload the container at the other yard.
I got a radio call that from Ron Gillette, the foreman, and he said the men were throwing up and there was something really wrong.
One of them fell down and hit me right in front of my feet. And it was opened up, and there it was. It was a mutilated body. And the more closer I looked at it, it was a human body.
And when I came to work the following day, I saw myself. I couldn't believe it. And just little bitty babies, just all torn in pieces. Their heads chopped off, arms, legs, it just makes you sick to see something like that. Well, it really just, it makes you want to cry when you see something like that.
Starting at the very front of this container, it was just wall clear to the ceiling and clear to the sides, filled with them.
I really don't want to witness it again. Not what I saw.
The following occurred shortly following Trump's announcement of the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett, who, in what should be cause for alarm for every freedom-loving, Bible-believing, constitutional patriot in the United States who understands what's going on right now, recently ruled with Democrats to keep Illinois Governor Pritzker's illegal lockdown in place, citing the 1905 Jacobson pro-forced vaccination decision as justification to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court.
Well, that's going to be up to all of the justices. They're going to see. I never discussed that with Amy. This is something that, because it wouldn't be appropriate to discuss, they're going to have to make a decision, and that's going to be for the judges to say. Yeah.
So that's Trump letting you know that it wouldn't have been appropriate to discuss the fundamental issue of abortion with Amy Coney Barrett, whom he's nominated to the Supreme Court. The fundamental issue upon which all other legal issues are rendered moot on behalf of those deprived of life by the Roe ruling. And he says it would be inappropriate to discuss it with the person he has picked to fill a vacancy on the bench of the leading court in the land. That's a man that's pro-life, it is said. Just not appropriate to discuss these things. But I don't think that's going to bother too many good Christians locked into their programming from the corporate mental conditioning and opinion-shaping apparatus. After all, we need a good conservative on the bench, and that's what counts. What this amoral brand of modern conservatism actually is and how Christians can support it is anyone's guess. Certainly it's not God who has said to choose you this day whom you will serve, the evil or whom you think to be the lesser of two evils but is still evil. I don't see that in his word. But we need to keep that Bible in its rightful place. After all, we aren't electing a pastor. Never mind the obvious fact that if the person you elect is not following God, then your nation will go to the devil. And whatever economic prosperity you may or may not receive will be cold comfort in exchange for the divine wrath to be poured out upon her for her whoring after mammon. But maybe God's changed and doesn't really work that way anymore. After all, that was all Old Testament, and God is just love, no justice today. Maybe he has to keep up with the times. But I'm sure during the first presidential debate with Biden, Trump had it all straightened out and was back on track concerning the issue that will once again cull him votes from God's people.
The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is already
You don't know it's
begun.
on the ballot. Why is it on the ballot?
Because
Why is it
you
on the
said
ballot? It's not on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the court.
I don't think so.
In the court. Well,
There's nothing happening there.
Donald, would you
And
just
you don't
be quiet
know
for a
her
minute?
view on Roe v. Wade. You
I
don't
don't
know her
know.
view.
Well, all right. Let's.
So Trump says straight out that Roe is not on the ballot and that there's nothing happening there, meaning no change to legalized abortion if he's elected or if he's not.
It's not on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the
I
court.
don't think so.
In the court. Well,
There's nothing happening there.
It's not on the ballot. Have you heard any so-called conservative talking heads bringing this up? What about Christians? Are Christians saying anything? Are they calling Trump out on this? Are they once again sticking their heads in the sand and pretending it doesn't matter? Are they willing to sell their souls so cheaply? What about the LGBTQ agenda?
You leave it the way it is. There have been very few complaints the way it is. People go, they use the bathroom that they feel is appropriate.
So if Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses?
That is correct. A friend of mine called up, he said, you know, you don't get enough credit because in Palm Beach, you opened a club that nobody would do, and it's open to everybody. It's open to everybody. And a person, a member of the club, great guy, who's gay, wrote this magnificent letter saying what Donald Trump did, nobody else would do.
Do you support marriage equality?
It's irrelevant because it was already settled. It's law. It was settled in the Supreme Court. I mean, it's done.
So even if you appoint a judge that...
It's done. You have, these cases have gone to the Supreme Court. They've been settled. And I think I'm fine with it.
Listen to John MacArthur's commentary on Trump and his agenda speaking in 2017.
I know that these guys are going back to churches, and a lot of the dear folks in their church want to know how to sort through what we see happening in our society politically. Dr. MacArthur, help us.
You guys have probably read, there's some interesting articles in the last couple of days on the relationship between Mark Driscoll and Donald Trump. Have you seen those? Yeah. And that the evangelical interest in Donald Trump and his crassness and rudeness and brashness and profanity, the way has been prepared by Mark Driscoll for that among evangelicals.
It's worth interjecting here that long before Mark Driscoll arrived on the scene, the way was prepared for tying evangelicals to the Republican Party and thereby to the Babylonian beast system to be used to fight politically on one side of their Hegelian dialectic against the lost and dying world they were called by their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ to reach spiritually with his gospel of reconciliation to God by Freemason false prophets Jerry Falwell Sr., Pat Robertson, and Timothy LaHaye, among others, through their moral majority movement during the Ronald Reagan years in the 1980s. That was the start of the slippery slope, but as MacArthur is about to allude to, at least there was some pretense to morality in the picture.
One of these articles talked about, remember the moral majority, when moral meant something, and now we have a guy running for president being advocated by Christian university presidents and pastors who is a public adulterer, multiple marriages. Does family mean anything? Does anybody care about family? When you've lived with women that weren't your wife while you were married to other ones and had paraded your sexual exploits in a book. And so what happened to the moral majority? Evangelicalism used to kind of be equated with the moral majority. Morality doesn't define us anymore. This is what makes what you're talking about so deadly serious. We aren't defined by morality anymore. It doesn't seem to matter. It certainly doesn't matter to, I guess you could say, non-evangelicals, which, take the Democratic side. That isn't even a discussion over there. But it doesn't seem to matter to evangelicals anymore that literally this is a man being elevated who is a model of everything that is destructive in morality in our culture.
To that I say, amen. Way to go, John. Way to speak the hard truth, brother. But now, after getting brought into the inner circle himself and graced by a phone call of support from Trump, who knows this is a political savvy move and will also help tie Christianity to him, as is the big demonic game plan of those about to set Rome on fire again, with Nero once again blaming the Christians, MacArthur sure is singing a different tune now.
Has the president reached out? Has he responded? Have you had a conversation with him?
Yes, as a matter of fact, not last Sunday, but the Sunday before, he called me after the Sunday morning service, and he was very gracious and said, I just want to thank you for taking a stand. Church is essential, and I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
Do you want to know why Trump and the rest of the Antichrist are especially glad you're doing what you're doing right now, John? Even though all Christians certainly should support you finally opening up your church. Just as all pastors who follow the Bible should be opening their churches and worshiping in congregation as the church called out of the world, it goes beyond simply schmoozing the evangelical vote. I believe it has everything to do with the fact that you give multiple reasons, many reasons before you ever come down to the one and only reason, and that is to stand on God's word and says, this is where God wants me to be. This is where God wants us as a congregation to be, worshiping Him, as His word has declared. Hebrews 10:25 has a caveat that says that we should gather together, assemble ourselves together, and so much the more as we see the day approaching. God knew from eternity past that there would be isolation in the last days and that our group worship would be that much more important to His believers to keep the flock from error and from fear, as well as the combined spiritual power of gathered believers praying together against the works of the enemy, offering prayers of praise and thanksgiving for His provision and calling on Him for protection and deliverance. A simple proclamation of "Thus saith the Lord" would not get a gracious response from an Antichrist. But if you go into, well, the Constitution and the CDC numbers are overinflated and the pandemic is not as dangerous as we once thought, so now it's safe to worship, you're at least subliminally tying the idea that worship of the living God is something that can be brought under the authority and justification of the state. You know what the devil hears when he hears that reasoning? He says, well, next time we'll just make it more dangerous. We'll come out with a real plague that will have people dropping dead in undeniable danger, and then all the churches will have to shut their doors. You know, if this thing isn't dangerous enough, we'll give them something that is dangerous enough. When you use that sort of justification for your reopening rather than just simply saying, "Thus saith the Lord," as you should have from the get-go, as my pastor did and thousands of other smaller pastors who they'll never have on the corporate news. Believe me, these guys will never get on the corporate news because they're not safe. They're not vetted by corporate news. But the devil hears, okay, you're not a sellout? Well, we'll see what price you will sell out at. It's like the guy, he comes along and he says, I'll give you $5 to shut your church. And the pastor says, I ain't no sellout, get out of here. And the guy comes back and he says, I got $1,000. You shut your church up, I'll give you $1,000. And the pastor's like, yeah, man, I ain't no sellout. So the guy comes back a week later. He's got a suitcase with $5 million in it. And he says, Pastor, I'll give you this $5 million if you shut the doors of your church. And the pastor says, oh man, what I could do for the ministry of God with that $5 million. And I could restart this church somewhere else. Well, yeah, I'll take the $5 million. And he takes the suitcase, and the guy says, hey, you're a sellout. And the pastor's like, what do you mean? And the guy says, yeah, you're a sellout. You're just not a cheap sellout. As Christians, we stand on the Word of God no matter what the cost. Or we reveal the truth is not in us. There's no other options here. The good churchman will say, oh, that's some tough talk. You're full of it, man. Let's see what happens when the persecution comes to your door. You'll fold up. And all I can tell you is it ain't have nothing to do with me. God will give me the courage to stand if I put my trust in Him, the same as He'll give you the courage to stand if you put your trust in Him. It has nothing to do with somebody being a tough guy. It has everything to do with "Thus saith the Lord." There are no other options if you're a Christian. And we got to stop giving our reluctance to stand justification based on our cowardice and our desire and our clinging on to our sin, and just stand. This is what time it is.
So do you know that not everything that you hear is what really is. Some of you need your eyes open concerning what God's doing with this administration.
Trump's the best president for Israel in the history of the world, and the Jewish people love him like he's the king of Israel. They love him like he's the second coming of God. The second coming of God. The second coming of God.
And you say, why did you pick Donald Trump to stay in charge of this country? Well, look at the men that God picked in the Bible throughout the ages. It was always men that had this flaw and that flaw, and yet God entered them and God spoke through them, and God saved his people, saved his planet, saved his countries.
He seems to enjoy having people pray for him. And when I started seeing these pictures that were on YouTube of Christian leaders reaching out their hand and praying for him, I was just flabbergasted. I mean, Donald Trump seems to enjoy this, and I believe that there is something going on in his heart, and I believe that God has raised him up.
I just want to pray that the Spirit of the Lord would rest on the President. Amen.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Could I ask you one question? Who did you vote for?
And then we talked a little bit about why, from certainly a biblical standpoint, Christians could not vote Democratic. Because there's no way that a Christian can affirm the slaughter of babies, homosexual activity, homosexual marriage, or any kind of gross immorality. No way we could, stand behind a candidate who was affirming transgender behavior, which of course is really the reprobate mind of Romans 1. So I said, these things aren't even political for us, sir. I said, these things are biblical. These things are laid down by the word of God, and we love God. We desire to honor him, and upholding righteousness in a society is what a church is supposed to do. So I said, any real, true believer is going to be on your side in this election, because it's not just an individual, it's an entire set of policies that Christians cannot in any way affirm.
But I wonder, has Trump really changed? Has the leopard changed his spots? Is he still, as corporate shill Hannity calls him, the deal maker in chief? How are great Christian men so gullible not to see when they are being played and being used to draw their people from the Lord their God to chasing after a Barabbas? Is the delusion and falling away this profound?
There's no way that a Christian can affirm the slaughter of babies.
It's not on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the court.
I don't think so.
In the court. Well,
there's nothing happening there.
Homosexual activity, homosexual marriage.
Do you support marriage equality?
It's irrelevant because it was already settled. It's law. It was settled in the Supreme Court. I mean, it's done.
So even if you appoint a judge that...
It's done. You have, these cases have gone to the Supreme Court. They've been settled. And I think I'm fine with it.
Or any kind of gross immorality. No way we could, stand behind a candidate who was affirming transgender behavior, which of course is really the reprobate mind of Romans 1.
So if Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses?
That is correct.
So I said, any real, true believer is going to be on your side in this election.
Somebody had to do it. I am the chosen one. Somebody had to do it. So I'm taking on China.
The question then is, if we had a real media, not merely this corporate-controlled, agenda-driving, left versus right, polarized farce arriving to us through the digital virtual reality feed, but one that did the job of actual journalism, asking real questions leading to real disclosure, and the American public at long last inundated with the truth by constant repetition, in the way the lies of the beast system are inundated and reinforced by constant repetition until the common man believes everyone accepts them, and therefore they must be true, and the second someone dares to question them by putting together logical deduction based on real documentation and the admissions of the social engineers themselves, they are shouted down as raving lunatics and conspiracy theorists. But rather, the American public, at long last, learned the undeniable truth that they were being asked to vote in the two-party scheme for one or the other of two baby-butchering, homosexual union as marriage-supporting pedophiles. Would Christians still vote? So I've been working my way through Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, and it seems to come as no mistake or surprise today that I read the following passage. This passage, I believe, illustrates the Christians' role in defeating this Hegelian dialectic whereby they draw us into taking a side within their false paradigm, their false dilemma. And when we do, when we take up a side in their cause to fight against the other side of their cause, they use us and they use Christians to further and advance this one world beast system of the devil. Now, I'm not a pacifist. I do believe in a just use of force. In the face of evil, you have to put down a violent evil that would destroy those that you've been given responsibility by God to protect. But certainly, at least looking back at the Russian Revolution of 1917, it would have been a lose-lose and immoral proposition to make a choice to fight for either the Imperial White Army of the Tsar or the Red Army of the Communists. And I do not intend on encouraging my sons to join this military we have in the United States in their furtherance of the one world empire, fighting on behalf of multinational corporate interests and the subjugation of peasants, people like myself in other lands. I do not see that as a just cause. It's military intervention is all it is on behalf of a very corrupt merchant class. So here's the passage as Solzhenitsyn relates it. He writes, "Here is an eyewitness description of a session of the Ryazan Rev Tribunal, which met in 1919 to hear the case of the Tolstoyan I. Yi Iv." He doesn't give the full name here. "With the proclamation of universal and compulsory conscription into the Red Army, just 1 year after the slogans, 'Down with the war, stick your bayonets in the ground, go home,' 54,697 deserters were caught and sent to the front by September 1919 in Ryazan province alone. And how many others were shot on the spot as examples? Yi Iv was not a deserter at all, but a man who simply and openly refused to enter military service because of his religious convictions. He was conscripted by main force, but in the barracks he refused to take up arms or undergo training. The enraged political commissar of the unit turned him over to the Cheka, saying, 'He does not recognize the Soviet government.' There was an interrogation. 3 Chekists sat behind the desk, each with a Naguan revolver in front of him. 'We have seen heroes like you before. You'll be on your knees to us in a minute. Either agree to fight immediately or we'll shoot you.' But Yev was firm. He couldn't fight. He was a believer in free Christianity, and his case was sent to the Rev Tribunal. It was an open session with 100 spectators in the hall. There was a polite elderly defense lawyer. The learned accuser, the term prosecutor was forbidden until 1922, was Nikolsky, another old jurist. One of the members of the Rev Tribunal, a juror, tried to elicit the views of the accused. 'How can you, a representative of the working people, share the opinions of the aristocrat Count Tolstoy?' But the presiding judge interrupted the questioning and refused to permit it to continue. There was a quarrel. Juror: 'You do not want to kill people, and you try to persuade others to refrain from killing. But the whites began the war, and you are preventing us from defending ourselves. We will send you to the Kolchak, and you can preach your non-resistance there.' Yi Iv: 'I will go wherever you send me.' Accuser: 'This tribunal is not supposed to concern itself with any nondescript criminal actions, but only with those which are counter-revolutionary. In view of the nature of this crime, I demand that the case be turned over to a people's court.' Presiding judge: 'Ha, actions, what a pettifogger you are. We are guided not by the laws, but by our revolutionary conscience.' Accuser: 'I insist that you include my demand in the record.' Defense attorney: 'I support the accuser. The case should be heard in an ordinary court.' Presiding judge: 'There's an old fool for you. Where did they manage to find him? Defense attorney. I have been a practicing lawyer for 40 years, and this is the first time I have heard such an insult. Enter it in the record. Presiding judge laughing. We'll enter it in, we'll enter it in. Laughter in the hall. The court exits in order to confer. The sounds of a noisy argument come from the conference room. They return with a sentence. To be shot. Loud indignation in the hall. Accuser. I protest against the sentence and will complain to the Commissariat of Justice. Defense lawyer. I join my voice to that of the accuser. Presiding judge. Clear the hall. The convoy came and led Yeev to jail, saying to him, If everyone was like you, brother, how good it would be. There would be no war, and no whites, and no reds. To which, in the context of the modern revolution to bring in the one world order of Antichrist we see playing out today, and the way in which Christians are being coaxed into taking a side within its struggle, the resolution of which will be the dissolving of all national sovereignty and the total suppression of biblical Christianity, I would add, were the people of God to take their stand and refuse to be used as political pawns in this charade, if we were all to follow our Lord Jesus Christ alone, there would be no means for the satanic powers to facilitate their aims through us. There would be no Republicans, no Democrats, just Christ versus Antichrist, as it's really always only been. I know there will be people who will say, we can't say that. It'll undermine confidence in Trump and then we'll lose our country. You are going to help hand over the country to the communists, and so forth and so on.
They just can't break that programming. You've already lost your country. You're being asked to decide between two pedophiles, two baby butchering, homosexual endorsing, beast system promoting pedophiles. So you really already lost. No matter what your programming from the state endorsed channels are telling you, you've already lost your country. All you can do now is lose your witness and tie Christianity and Christians to the beast system. And then we all lose, because when this thing goes down, the Christians are going to be on the firing line because they're the ones tied to Trump, who will be made to look like he destroyed the country. Who put him in power? It'll be hard to deny it was Christians. And so then we all really lose. So the hand-wringing and the fretting about don't say that is nonsense. The only way you win is if you stand on God's word, and then he protects you. He provides for you. You don't compromise, no matter how they try to manipulate you. You've lost your country, and it hasn't happened overnight. For generations now, the church and the American people at large have been content to play church, to make money, to chase their good times and their material gains, to whore after social political ideologies and political parties, and turn a blind eye to what's going on in the country, what's going on, how our country is being used to subjugate the world and oppress poor people and Christians in far-off lands. And good churchmen have been content to sit in their churches and sing God Bless America, while the stench of her sins has wafted up into the nostrils of the Most High God. And so what we're seeing now is simply a culmination of what has been going on for a very long time. And it is just ramping up. But when the judgment comes upon her, we will all be affected. And it will only be those who put their trust wholly in God and not in any way, shape, or form in a man or in man, who God will preserve as a remnant. Because while these good Christians sing God Bless America and turn a deaf ear and a blind eye to what their country is really doing and what's going on in their country, God is listing her sins just as he did to the children of Israel before their fall, before they were led into captivity. And he is saying, this is what you've actually been doing. This is what you are doing. God bless America? How will I not punish you for these sins? And while there have always been truth tellers to the society and to the church, we will all suffer when God's judgment comes down. And it says right there in Scripture that judgment starts with the house of God. It'll only be those who draw near to God, who get near to God, as he has said, draw near to me and I will draw near to you, who he will protect and provide for, who will be a remnant church until the end.
There's two passages I think are pertinent to what we see today that have direct application. What God is saying to his people, to the people of the United States of America, who need to be subjugated in order for this whole thing, this whole worldwide thing to happen, and to his people that call themselves by his name, his church, his called out ones, supposed to be called out ones, who should be coming out of Babylon. What he is saying to them right now, the analogies and the application of Jeremiah 5 is very pertinent. So I'm going to read that now from the Berean Study Bible. God is talking to Jeremiah and telling him, search all over my city and find you one person who actually truly seeks the truth, and I'll spare the city. Jeremiah 5. Go up and down the streets of Jerusalem. Look now and take note. Search her squares. If you can find a single person, anyone who acts justly, anyone who seeks the truth, then I will forgive the city. Although they say, as surely as the Lord lives, they are swearing falsely. O Lord, do not your eyes look for truth? You struck them, but they feel no pain. You finished them off, but they refuse to accept discipline. They have made their faces harder than stone and refuse to repent. Then I said, they are only the poor. They have played the fool, for they do not know the way of the Lord, the justice of their God. I will go to the powerful and speak to them. Surely they know the way of the Lord, the justice of their God. But they too, with one accord, had broken the yoke and torn off the chains. Therefore a lion from the forest will strike them down, a wolf from the desert will ravage them. A leopard will lie in wait near their cities, and every one who ventures out will be torn to pieces. For their rebellious acts are many, and their unfaithful deeds are numerous. Why should I forgive you? Your children have forsaken me and sworn by gods that are not gods. I satisfied their needs, yet they committed adultery and assembled at the houses of prostitutes. They are well-fed, lusty stallions, each neighing after his neighbor's wife. Should I not punish them for these things? Declares the Lord. Should I not avenge myself on such a nation as this? Go up through her vineyards and ravage them, but do not finish them off. Strip off her branches, for they do not belong to the Lord. For the house of Israel and the house of Judah have been utterly unfaithful to me. They have lied about the Lord and said, He will not do anything. Harm will not come to us. We will not see sword or famine. The prophets are but wind, for the word is not in them. So let their own predictions befall them. Therefore, this is what the Lord God of hosts says. Because you have spoken this word, I will make my words a fire in your mouth, and this people the wood it consumes. Behold, I am bringing a distant nation against you, O house of Israel, declares the Lord. It is an established nation, an ancient nation, a nation whose language you do not know and whose speech you do not understand. Their quivers are like open graves. They are all mighty men. They will devour your harvest and food. They will consume your sons and daughters. They will eat up your flocks and herds. They will feed on your vines and fig trees. With the sword they will destroy the fortified cities in which you trust. Yet even in those days, declares the Lord, I will not make a full end of you. And when the people ask, For what offense has the Lord our God done all these things to us? You are to tell them, Just as you have forsaken me and served foreign gods in your land, so will you serve foreigners in a land that is not your own. Declare this in the house of Jacob, and proclaim it in Judah. Hear this, O foolish and senseless people, who have eyes but do not see, who have ears but do not hear. Do you fear me, declares the Lord? Do you not tremble before me, the one who set the sand as the boundary for the sea, an enduring barrier it cannot cross? The waves surge, but they cannot prevail. They roar, but cannot cross it. But these people have stubborn and rebellious hearts. They have turned aside and gone away. They have not said in their hearts, Let us fear the Lord our God, who gives the rains, both autumn and spring, in season, who keeps for us the appointed weeks of harvest. Your iniquities have diverted these from you. Your sins have deprived you of my bounty. For among my people are wicked men. They watch like fowlers lying in wait. They set a trap to catch men. Like cages full of birds, so their houses are full of deceit. Therefore they have become powerful and rich. They have grown fat and sleek, and have excelled in the deeds of the wicked. They have not taken up the cause of the fatherless, that they might prosper, nor have they defended the rights of the needy. Should I not punish them for these things, declares the Lord? Should I not avenge myself on such a nation as this? A horrible and shocking thing has happened in the land. The prophets prophesy falsely, and the priests rule by their own authority. My people love it so. But what will you do in the end? Indeed, what will we do in the end? And this is what God says to his people. This is his instruction to us. Psalm 33. The Lord frustrates the plans of the nations. He thwarts the devices of the peoples. The counsel of the Lord stands forever, the purposes of his heart to all generations. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people he has chosen as his inheritance. The Lord looks down from heaven and sees all the sons of men. From his dwelling place he gazes on all who inhabit the earth. He shapes the hearts of each. He considers all their works. No king is saved by his vast army. No warrior is delivered by his great strength. A horse is a vain hope for salvation. Even its great strength cannot save. Surely the eyes of the Lord are on those who fear him, on those whose hope is in his loving devotion, to deliver them from death and keep them alive in famine. Our soul waits for the Lord. He is our help and our shield. For our hearts rejoice in him, since we trust in his holy name. May your loving devotion rest on us, O Lord, as we put our hope in you. The KJV puts it, Let thy mercy, O Lord, be upon us, according as we hope in thee. By the measure in which we put our hope in the Lord, so will his mercy and his provision be on us.
You will rarely find a message now on repentance. Look at what has become of the world, Church of Christ, through you, losing what you should have been. But God waits for his people. God waits for his people. When will they take the stepping stones God has placed in his word? Church that has forgotten its foundations, a church that's turned away from its beginnings and begins to become a harlot church. Just tell me how blessed I am. Just tell me I'm going to be powerful and popular and going to have no trouble in my life. Just tell me these things. Watered down. Half-truths. This gospel says, just believe and get saved. There's nothing of repentance, nothing of godly sorrow, nothing of turning from your sins, nothing about taking up your cross and following the Lord. But people who say a little prayer said, you're fine, you're good. People believe that any standard, even if the New Testament is legalism and bondage and law, any standard is law. I'm under grace, I can do anything. Oh, that's from the devil. Now we've revised that and said, if you can get people for 1 hour on Sunday morning in the building, that's the church. That's not the church. We can use every device we want to get people for 1 hour and keep it early and keep it moving and keep it going. But that's not the church Jesus built. And I'm embarrassed to be part of the Church of Jesus today because I believe it's an embarrassment to a holy God. Most of our joy is clapping our hands and having a good time, and then afterwards we're talking all the dribble of the world. Don't talk to us about holiness or separation from the world. We don't want to hear that, folks. People today don't want to hear anything they call gloom and doom. If it's not smooth, it's gloom and doom. Well, friend, let me tell you lovingly, go to hell and live with all the scum of the earth. You like to drink, go with the drinkers. You like to lust, go with the prostitutes.
To have been covered in something deceptive, to find in the last moments of your life that the feet coming down the hallway are not taking you to heaven. You can get through the deception your whole life. You can even sing in the choir.
And I think we better watch this business of, God loves you, and all the bumper sticker sloppy evangelism. Will you remind people of the goodness and the severity of God? Will you remind them that there's a day when mercy is cut off forever? Will you remind them that people pray in hell but nobody ever answers?
But in spite of what God has spoken, they create a garment of fig leaves and they cover themselves and say, all is well, all is well. And they seek out a church that won't challenge their sin, that won't expose this hypocrisy for what it is. I'd rather you get mad at me and go to heaven.
This so-called love gospel today only reaches the flesh. It can't get to the heart. It can't dig into sin so that there can be a cleansing. And if I'm a surgeon of the Holy Ghost, I'm not going to put a bandage on you when you've got cancer sticking out of a bone or on your flesh. We're going to say, hey, we got to get in there. It has to be dealt with. And we do. I don't care if you like me, but I'm a good surgeon and I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to get your cancer out.
This is the reason why some who are listening even now and will be listening to tapes in the future, you just can't lighten up and enjoy these theologically shallow experiences like so many around you are today. Everyone around you saying, oh, lighten up, lighten up. God's love, God's good, God's kind, God is nice. Come to church and your commute is short. Stick your feet on the altar rail. Have a coffee and cookies with us. We'll hear 3-point messages on nothing about God. But there's a stirring in you. There's a stirring in the true bride in this generation.
Now I'm going to tell you something. A diluted gospel is no gospel at all.
Businessmen. They were crass businessmen coming into something that God said, my house shall be called a house of prayer. You made it a den of thieves. You're getting over on the people. Out with you.
And if you don't believe this is happening in our generation, I challenge you to go to a Christian bookstore this week and find the bestsellers. Ask them which are the bestsellers and look at them. Look at the covers. They're the images of men, not the images of God. 5 steps to be like me. 5 steps to better yourself. 5 steps to the new you. 5 steps to a wonderful destiny, with their glossy faces on the cover. Not so subtly telling the Church of Jesus Christ, if you use the principles of God, you will look like me.
In the 14th chapter of Romans, and he says we, so he writes home even to believers at the judgment seat. We must all, there's no exception. We must stand at the judgment seat of Christ. You can't send your lawyer, you can't send a representative. Because one day, it doesn't matter if your friends approve of you, doesn't matter how many albums you sell, one day the Bible says, I'm going to stand in front of the one whose eyes are like fire, and I can't get over on him. All of you that sing in that choir, it's not just if you're on your note, it's why you're on your note. Can you see all the saints of all the ages? And Leonard Ravenhill is standing there before a Christ whose eyes are full of holiness, where the place is breathing holiness, where there's all the majesty of an awesome God. And he reads the record of my poor life before all the saints of all the ages. Unto God, all you theologians reasoning out my theology. Just unto God, are you pure in heart?
And you became enamored with your own beauty. And your whole theological focus now is how you can be smarter, better looking, more prosperous. You lost the call of God, church.
You've made it a place just to make a buck. So out with you. Church of Christ with God, when will you grieve most? Hunger, thirst of the righteousness. Now I'm going to tell you something. A diluted gospel is no gospel at all. Become new, but when the church is in the state we are, the standard is not preached or lived or presented. We need to see God back for the standard of this book, not men's standard. What Christ says. I'm not presenting to you some holiness of a holiness movement. I'm teaching to you Christ's word, that the only holiness is not heresy.
I want to challenge you with everything in me. Put away lifeless religion. Put away empty pursuits of God. Put away all of the deception of the carnal nature.
Holy, be ye holy, for I am holy. That's God's words, not mine. Would to God that Episcopalian, Presbyterian, Baptist, Methodist, Pentecostal pastors begin to stand up and see what's happening to the church that was once called the Church of Jesus Christ. Backsliding, turning apostate, turning against the truths of their founding fathers.
When I see the church in the New Testament, they didn't have stately buildings. They didn't have paid evangelists. They didn't have a lot of money. They didn't have organization. Couldn't get on TV and beg. But I'll tell you what they did. They turned the world upside down. But are you big enough to say, Lord, in this crucial hour in human history, let me fill up the sufferings of Christ?
But if the Holy Spirit is truly upon you in this generation, you will not be satisfied. You will not be found among those who sit in supposed houses of God with your feet on the altar rail and a cup of coffee in your hand, listening to a PowerPoint sermon about a Christ they don't know. You'll not be satisfied.
Because if you're going to get mature in God, all the dwarfs around you will criticize and sneer at you and say you're trying to be holier than the rest of us, For God has not merely given us Jesus Christ, He's given us all things. And because there isn't enough joy in the house of God, we need entertainment. Because entertainment is the devil's substitute for joy.
We're living in a time, as the prophet Malachi said, when those who feared the Lord are going to get together one more time and think on His name, and a book of remembrance will be written for them, and they will return, and they will know the difference between those who serve God and those who don't serve Him.
Folks, we've got to deal with sin. We've got to deal with things that in life, they're divorcing and all these things we have to do something about. We have to face a holy God one day.
There's a great trial coming, folks, for everyone. Praise God. He's going to deliver the true believer.
I want you to change your message. I'm telling you now, the judgment is at the door. The handwriting is on the wall. The whole world is shaking. And you're amusing this people. Even if you have to bury your theology, sir, just bury it tonight and get right with God.
Just turn from your sin, for all this society is about to come under the justice of God.